Wanted us to step back this morning briefly to Exodus chapter 3, which we read on Sunday, where we hear God meeting Moses at the burning bush. And he says these amazing words: I have seen, I have heard, and now I have come down. I love this passage. I have seen, I have heard, I have come down, says God Almighty to Moses, having heard the cries of his people, the Israelites living in captivity in Egypt. And it reminds me of Genesis chapter 2, where God creates Adam. And the writer of Genesis tells us that God formed Adam out of the mud of the earth and then breathed the Spirit of God into him. I love these passages because they really speak about God's physical engagement with us. He's from the beginning of the scriptures, from Genesis chapter 2 through into Exodus and then through the whole scriptures, God is constantly reaching out physically, touching and engaging with us, breathing into us, hearing us, being moved by us, and coming down to us. And so our reading today from Luke chapter 4 and verse 40 really continues this and shows how God literally came down in the person of his son, Jesus Christ, came down in human form and dwelt among us and experienced life as we experience it. And in Luke 4, verse 40, people come to Jesus for healing. And Luke tells us that Jesus laid his hands on each one and he healed them. He laid his hands on each one and he healed them. I love that physical contact. Jesus could surely have just stood and spoken and cleansed everybody in one kind of mass healing, but he takes them one by one and he lays his hands on them and he heals them. In the following chapter, which wasn't in today's reading, but will be coming up soon, in Luke chapter 5, verse 13, Jesus encounters a leper who we know were in those days regarded as spiritually and physically and in terms of health, really medically unclean, dangerous, and contagious. But Jesus reaches out and touches the man. Luke 5, verse 13, Jesus reaches out and touches the leper and says, "You are well, your faith has healed you." I love again that Jesus crosses all of these boundaries of what is considered safe and appropriate, what's considered dangerous, and he wants to make touch with us. And I want to say to you that he is still doing the same thing today. What he's been doing since the beginning of creation, what he did throughout the First Testament, what he did throughout Jesus' ministry, he continues to do with you today. He wants to reach out and touch you and bring healing and wholeness in your life, to breathe the Spirit of God into you. And so I invite you today, if you're struggling with something, bring it to Jesus and ask him to touch you, to breathe on you, to heal you, to make you whole, and to bring you into the center of his presence. And then I also want to encourage you to go out and do that for others. Go and be God's healing presence, be his hands and his feet and